The 911 Carrera has been one of the world's best-selling sports cars ever since its launch in the early 1970s. This is an automotive icon whose designers saw little reason to change much over the decades. But recently, there has been a minor revolution. This 911 convertible sounds somehow different. No wonder, because under the hood of the latest edition, you'll find a decisive change. More fun with less displacement is the message, explains our car reviewer Reinhold. The turbo has a lower-key sound than its predecessor. The turbo dampens the sound a bit, which is good for the North American market due to greater sensitivity there when it comes to driving to work early in the morning or late at night. The sat-nav is all new, stylish, and with a pop-up menu, although that's old school if you consider the Seat Leon. The engine has a smaller capacity, but delivers 15 kilowatts more power. That sounds less spectacular than it feels, because the turbo gives the car far more torque and faster response over a wider revs range. Depending on the model, this will cut fuel consumption by up to 12%, says Porsche. Our test car is a regular 911 Carrera with a dual-clutch transmission. With an output of 272 kilowatts, it makes the dash to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.4 seconds in the Sport Plus mode. Combined cycle fuel consumption is officially 7.5 liters for 100 kilometers. Little has changed as regards the exterior. The fabric top is power-operated, but only at modest speeds, of course. At the rear, the black fins are a real eye-catcher. It's here that the revolution under the hood is reflected visually on the outside. This is a facelift, explains Porsche engineer Thomas Brandl. That means minimal changes to the shell, so getting the intercooling, a new forced induction and other turbo periphery into the same rear. There's a new air intake grille for functional reasons. When the spoiler goes up, there's a little wind deflector. Instead of whooshing between the spoiler and the rear, the air goes straight into the engine compartment. That serves both the intercooling setup and the turbocharger.
Zusätzlich, den Performancegewinn und die Kühlung auch hier darzustellen.
The 911 has a very modern front cabin. The new PCM infotainment system is operated with the ease of a smartphone. The seats are as you would expect from Porsche, sporty and comfortable. It wasn't easy integrating all these additional components into the existing rear section, explains the Porsche engineer. It took a lot of work to package everything in nicely, without making any significant changes to the car. There are 2 cooling air outlets, but that was basically it.
Aber sonst waren im Wesentlichen keine groben Veränderungen am Fahrzeug notwendig, hier jetzt die neuen Komponenten zu packagen.
For all the modifications, the Porsche icon remains what it was without the turbo. Honest, direct, bold, and amazingly easy to handle, but also very expensive. Prices for the 911 convertible in Germany start at just under 110,000 euros. The 911 has gotten a freshening up. The turbos translate into more output and torque. Big noise fans might miss the drop in sound performance, but Reinhold suggests the Sport exhaust system option. Then touch on the gas at, say, 50 kilometers an hour in second gear and release again, and the 911 will sound like an old 8-cylinder naturally aspirated engine. And you'll hear it all inside, too, thanks to the 2 sound symposers. The only drawback for all 911s, they've gone up in price. The new Mazda 6 looks rather different. There's the striking front, for example. The radiator grille has been restructured and now dominates even more, and the interior has changed as well. Car tester Michelle says the interior is designed for clarity. Everything is in its place, but for her taste, it's all a little sterile. She'd like more flair. What she does like is the dashboard, where the dynamic exterior contour is continued inside. The new 7-inch touchscreen gives the dashboard a very contemporary look, while the chrome trim and leatherette seats lend the interior a superior feel. The front cabin has been made more comfortable. But it's not just the interior that impresses Michelle. She emphasizes the dynamic lines extending across the entire chassis. The design must be a winner because 75,000 car drivers in Europe have purchased a Mazda 6 since the beginning of 2013. From the exclusive line upward, the 6 has full LED headlights and LED daytime running lights. What hasn't changed is the ample 480 liters of space in the trunk. So, plenty of room, but our car tester sees one problem with all that space. The trunk is very deep, so if her keys were way down in the back corner, for example, she would have to climb all the way in to recover them.
Hier hinten rein klettern, den wieder zu kriegen.
To increase ride quality, Mazda has improved the sound and vibration insulation. Reworked shock absorbers also make for a more comfortable ride. Michelle is convinced by the Mazda 6's drivability too. The steering is very direct and the car is incredibly quiet. But she has a major complaint. Her field of vision is restricted in the front and to the back. According to the manufacturer, the 121-kilowatt Skyactiv G engine we tested uses an average of 6 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. Michelle sums up, the Mazda 6 is a good-looking, solid car. But however handsome the radiator grille may be, the dropped hood makes it hard for the driver to have the whole car in view. So just as well it comes with a parking assist. The Mazda 6 is well equipped to give its European competitors a run for their money. Spring 2016 is set to be a sporting season, with the Mercedes SL63 AMG hitting the streets in April. It features a reworked front section with a standard-fitted diamond radiator grille broadened at the bottom. The SL63 is powered by a 5.5-liter V8 bi-turbo engine, which pumps out a hefty 430 kilowatts. Among the visual highlights, the additional air outlets with chrome bars behind the wheels. Ford is also showing its sportier side. March sees Ford launching the third generation of the Focus RS. The 2.3-liter turbocharged gasoline engine generates 257 kilowatts. And as a little extra, Ford has added a drift mode. The car will debut in all-wheel drive with dynamic torque vectoring for enhanced traction and grip. The new RS will be manufactured in Germany. Prices are not yet available. By 2030, the European Union aims to reduce CO2 emissions in road freight transport by 30% compared to 2005 levels. Truck manufacturers can't meet this challenge solely by improving their engines. Mercedes and some German logistics firms have launched a project called Efficiency Run. It carries out road tests not only of the tractor unit, but of the truck as a whole system. Components already on the market were used to optimize various aspects of current Actros semi-trailer trucks. Wolfgang Bernhardt, head of Daimler's truck division, says the trials concentrated on the tractor units, trailers, and tires. All of the tractors were equipped with predictive powertrain control, tires with low rolling resistance, and trailers with aerodynamic side panels. The efficiency run was accompanied by the independent vehicle testing organization DEKRA. Its specialists not only rode along on the test drives, they also defined the test conditions and supervised the measuring. DEKRA's managing director, Gert Neumann, says the aim was to test the combined effects of 3 measures in actual road traffic and to come up with reproducible results.
Zu überprüfen und dabei zu vergleichbaren Ergebnissen zu kommen.
The motto of the efficiency run was everything as close to the real world as possible. 3 leading shipping companies, DB Schenker Logistics, Elfline, and Große Vene, each provided a semi-truck from their fleet for a week of test runs. Under realistic conditions and direct comparison, the shipping companies' conventional trucks were pitted against Mercedes vehicles optimized for the purpose. To make for a fair comparison, all the trucks were loaded in exactly the same way. Elfline's managing director, Rüdiger Elfline, cites the firm's aim to keep innovating for the future, including reducing fuel consumption. Elfline has achieved fuel savings of almost 20% in recent years. 30% of the total expenses of truck ownership are fuel costs, so a 20% reduction means huge savings. Any measure reducing fuel consumption eventually pays for itself. To achieve reliable test results, the test trucks are refueled under supervision from the same calibrated fuel truck. That ensures the same quality of fuel at the same temperature for each vehicle. Most of the fuel is first pumped into the fuel tank with the last liter from a measuring cylinder. Then a scale measures the vehicle's weight, complete and by individual axle. The Elfline company is taking part in the tests with an extra long truck. Mercedes has also ecologically optimized such a semi with trailer. Extra long trucks are advantageous for transporting large volumes with relatively low weight. In terms of transport capacity, 2 extra long trucks are the equivalent of 3 conventional semi-trucks. That alone is enough to improve CO2 emissions. In this test, the optimizations that Mercedes carried out on its truck reduced emissions by up to 14%. Even the experts were surprised. The DEKRA manager says he didn't expect such dramatic results, maybe 5 or 10%, but nothing in the double digits. This clear result was a very pleasant surprise. Ewald Kaiser, head of Schenker's land transport division, says its test truck consumed 12% less fuel, which also means a reduction in CO2 emissions. The efficiency run has shown that readily available technology can reduce CO2 emissions, but there is still plenty to do. Wolfgang Bernhardt wants to continue working with the shipping companies to improve tires to reduce CO2 emissions, but also so they last longer and cost less. He also has his eye on saving money through joint purchasing. Daimler will also offer trucks with predictive powertrain control, and it wants to make its aerodynamic panels more robust for everyday use without sacrificing efficiency. The Elfline manager is happy about the course being set and praises Daimler for the steps it has taken. He envisions hybridizing the truck, considering how much energy is lost when a 40-ton vehicle rolls down a mountain, using the brakes frequently and hard. That energy needs to be recaptured for use in the next uphill stretch. So there are additional possibilities to improving the efficiency of long-distance truck hauling. Mercedes' approach of regarding semi-trucks as a whole integrated system is promising. Trucks with lower emissions would be better for everyone. Shipping companies would save fuel and money, and the environment would profit too. Why didn't anyone think of this before? These days, practically all car makers have a presence in the booming SUV segment. Off-roaders, big and small, and in all manner of variations are now popping up like mushrooms. Among the older hands here is the BMW X3. It's been on the market for 12 years now, 4 more than one of its biggest rivals, the VW Tiguan. The latest, second generation, was given a facelift in 2014. The design is classic, but not exactly daring. Other manufacturers take a far more courageous approach when it comes to designing their SUVs. We checked out the xDrive 20i version of the X3 with an 8-speed automatic transmission coupled with all-wheel drive. Packing 135 kilowatts of power, the car needs 8.2 seconds to accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. 270 Newton-meters of torque make this a sturdy mover. Our carman Chris likens the X3's drivability to that of a sedan. It's agile, sporty, and dynamic. But even if most owners won't need it, off-road, the xDrive all-wheel drive performs extremely well. It's a safe and solid drive. The X3 measures 4 meters 66 from tail to nose, making it 24 centimeters longer than the VW Tiguan and one of the biggest models in its class. And you really notice that from the interior space, both for rear seat passengers and cargo. The cargo capacity of around 400 liters is a little lower than its predecessor, but you still have an enormous amount of room to stow away your personal effects. Chris finds the rear particularly handy for transporting bulkier items such as skis. The instruments and display units have a slick sobriety about them. You can operate a variety of functions with the iDrive controller, which includes a touchpad for typed-in text entry. Comparing the entry-level models of the Tiguan and X3, the BMW is around $12.5 pricier. Overall, the X3 is in the higher cost bracket, but for that you get good quality and great workmanship, plus acres of space, and the rear bench too. One minor downside, all-round visibility could be better. Citroen's Deux Chevaux was to France what the Volkswagen Beetle was to Germany, mobility for the masses. It was designed in the 1930s to help French farmers who still relied on horses and carts, as our classic car expert Christoph Bauer explains. He says Citroën boss Pierre Boulanger had concrete ideas about the car. It should have room for 2 farmers and a sack of potatoes, and do at least 60 kilometers an hour, yet have such a comfortable suspension that a basket of eggs could survive journeys over bumpy fields unscathed. It should be easy to operate, but looks weren't important. In 1939, Citroën began making prototypes of the TPV, as it was then called, for toute petite voiture, or very small car. Though not terribly attractive, they met Boulanger's criteria, even passing the test with a basket of eggs. Head designer Flaminio Bertoni was told to keep the car functional. He was instructed to create an umbrella on four wheels. Christoph says that after the end of the Second World War, Bertoni was allowed to gussy up the body a little. In 1948, the Deux Chevaux finally made its debut, but response was lukewarm. The press dubbed the car a sardine can, or even worse, an ugly duckling. Ooh la la. In Germany, the name stuck. To this day, the car is lovingly known as Die Ente, or the duck. In France, the car quickly became a favorite. And why not? After all, it was designed to meet the wishes of the public as expressed in one of the first big market surveys conducted in 1922. Then, tire manufacturer Michelin asked 10,000 people what their ideal car would be like. Christoph says it'd be hard to build a more basic car than the Deux Chevaux. To him, the seats resemble camping chairs. The windows don't roll down. You swing them out and hook them on here. And you can hardly call this a dashboard. It's just a couple of pieces of sheet metal that have been cobbled together. Interestingly, the main instrument here is the battery indicator. The speedometer's stuck here in the corner. Strangely enough, the speedometer cable simultaneously powers the windshield wipers. So if it rains hard, you have to put your foot on the gas.
Großartig.
Fabulous. Christoph says the Deux Chevaux was built on a box frame on which all of the body parts are mounted. So, like the VW Beetle, it doesn't employ unibody construction. And as you can tell from the protruding wings and hood-mounted headlights, its old-fashioned design dates from the pre-World War II era. But its huge, soft top also makes it into a convertible. What sounds like a luxury was, at the time, nothing but a cost-cutting measure, as sheet metal was in short supply in the post-war era. Citroen never tried to pass off its ugly duckling as a beautiful swan. Its ads said the car's shape was unusual, but that its performance was second to none. The vehicle's legendary suspension with its longitudinal coil springs made the Deux Chevaux feel like no other on the road. The Spartan trunk can hold many sacks of potatoes, while the rollback canvas roof lets in plenty of fresh air. Inside, the simplest of seats and the unfinished-looking cockpit complete the minimalist look. And Christoph says under the hood you'll find the two-cylinder 425cc boxer engine with an output of just 12 horsepower. You can't get much lower than that, although the first Deux Chevaux had just 9 horsepower. Yet the engine was progressive for its time. To reduce weight, the cylinder heads and cylinder block were made entirely from aluminum. And he says it's the only car he knows that you can start with a crank that was still in production in 1990. Citroen even considered doing without an ignition switch and starter motor. They reasoned that it was a car for farmers who all had wives to turn the crank. So much for equal opportunity, Christoph says. Even the Deux Chevaux with the most powerful engines have a hard time breaking the 100-kilometer-an-hour barrier. Going from 0 to 100 takes 30 to 40 seconds, yet there's no time to get bored. Christoph says the Deux Chevaux' off-road capabilities and hair-raising cornering are legendary. If you push it, the car tips so far to the side that you think it's going to turn over, but it doesn't. Its boxer engine makes for an extremely low center of gravity, so it's almost impossible for the Deux Chevaux to flip over. Back in 1967, Citroën considered stopping production, but the Deux Chevaux survived and continued to roll off assembly lines until 1988 in France and 1990 in Portugal. In its later years, the model's horsepower increased to 28, 3 times as much as the original Deux Chevaux. Christoph says it's hard to make a car with less. The 2 chevaux technology was extremely basic, and it cost almost nothing to run. That turned this anti-status symbol into a much-loved status symbol for students, anti-nuclear activists, and environmentalists. More than 5 million were built over 4 decades. He feels the 2 chevaux symbolizes savoir-vivre, the French way of life like no other car, which makes it a true milestone in automotive history. Its low costs and robust technology have made this Citroen an enduring classic. Despite its small engine, some drivers have clocked up 300,000 kilometers on their 2 chevaux. Not bad for an umbrella on 4 wheels.